Welcome to another session. I hope you were well. I continue today's session as part of a series of conversations themed around the masculine burden of performance. In today's session, I talk about pride. At the core of the message and at the core of the series is success and how men can find success and how we can strive towards becoming more successful. I took a different twist, however. Rather than providing positive steps to take towards success, I have been using what I call the negative art of success, which is identifying and eliminating negative obstacles that prevent you from achieving success. The purpose was a simple one. If you eliminate all of the obstacles in the way, then it should be easier to get to success. The shortest distance between 2 points is the best route to travel. However, the assumption is that there are no obstacles on the way. If there are obstacles on the way, you have a choice. You go around, above, underneath, or through the obstacle. The challenge is all of those options provide sometimes unpleasant outcomes. If you go through the obstacle, you can set yourself back both in time and cost and resources and damage. Set yourself back so far that by the time it takes you back to where you should have been, you've lost so many years. And so the idea was, if you eliminate all the obstacles in the way and you simply travel via the shortest distance, you will get to the destination much faster and in better condition. Now, pride is a very subtle aspect of the whole obstacles that most people face. Pride and arrogance sometimes go hand in hand, although they are not synonymous. Let me start by saying in today's session that pride is a natural. It comes almost naturally and instinctively to everyone. Humility, you might say, is the antidote to pride. We are human beings, humus men or humus, and that means we're supposed to be humble because we come from the earth, we come from dirt, we are nothing. And therefore, most of our association with pride has to do with our achievements or things that are physical. In order to overcome that, you might say, innate desire or innate calling to be prideful, you have to always remember and remind yourself that you were nothing, that you're simply from dust, which is whence you've come, and to dust you will return. A very simple way that I've always kept myself in check, which is to remind myself you are nothing. And don't gloat in your greatness, in your brilliance, in your success, because pride is subtle, but the problem with pride is that it puts you in a vibration that is negative, where you start to think more highly of yourself and much better than other people. Humility is the key to stay humble along the journey to a success. One of the things I have observed, and I think one of the things I should start today's session with, is that to the average person, to the average man or young man, most of us do not see ourselves as prideful. I would hope at the end of today's session you recognize that you still have the same traits of pride, though you do not see yourself as prideful. Now, to do this, I would juxtapose what I call your calling, your purpose, or your potential against who you are today. Who you are today is quantifiable. Who you should be and who you could be is a dream, is a vision, is a target, is an outcome that you might wish for yourself or that you may not know is possible. The prideful person is content and happy with where they are. The humble person recognizes that whatever they've achieved and whatever they have as a claim, it could be much more, provided it is in service of a purpose, a calling, a gift, some vision, some mission. Think about life. Think about everyone you know who has been esteemed as successful. Mother Teresa was humble. Mahatma Gandhi was humble. And if you go through those who are, who've done a tremendous contribution to the world, Nelson Mandela was humble. And the list goes on. But if you come into the business world, Warren Buffett, humble. Charlie Munger, humble. Bill Gates, if you consider what Bill Gates has achieved over his entire lifetime, humble. Elon Musk, who is a businessman, an entrepreneur, an inventor, an investor, humble. Steve Jobs, yes, Steve had an arrogance with his intelligence, but also still had the humility about him as well, especially when he went through the phase of leaving Apple and going to Pixar and then coming back. He had a humility with that, you might say, crisis that he went through in his life. Jeff Bezos, these are humble men. These are people who have achieved so much success, but still remain humble. Part of the reason for that is that they remember the ground from whence they come. They remember the days of humble beginnings. Now, in my opinion, younger men have a higher risk of having what I call subtle pride than older men, primarily because younger men, let's use a good example, 18 is the standard age where you become chronologically an adult. But during your teenage years, you have been limited by virtue of the fact that people say you're still a teenager, you're not an adult. And there have been so many things that you were not allowed to do legally. So you have this desire to do things, and you cannot wait to turn 18 and to be independent. And therefore, it's not unusual to find that young men have an aura of pride at the point where they become independent or when they become an adult. And at that point in time, there's an assumption that they have it all, they have everything figured out, and that the wisdom of the ages amongst people who are in the community or people who they should listen to is not necessary, that they have the keys to the vault and they have the keys to success. And I tend to find that I use an analogy referencing periods in a man's timeline. 18 to 22, education. 23 all the way to 30 should be time invested in sowing the seeds and working hard and apprenticing under someone. 30 to 35 is when you fail. 35 and over is when you actually start the journey of being a man. As a matter of fact, I think a man's manhood value doesn't really start until 35. However, between 18 and 35, you have 18 years. Recognizing that sometimes where you are is the preparation ground for your final work, and you have to do the most you can because it's a preparation ground before you're given the opportunity to serve in that place of your calling. Think about life. Think about great people we know. A period of preparation which ensured that when they got to the position of responsibility, that they were mature enough, seasoned enough, humble enough, and did not have pride. Now, the reason pride is one of the 7 deadly sins is because it takes over your psyche. We know of stories from the books of antiquities about people who became prideful, either by association or by choice. I will say this: information and knowledge is one of the keys to having a prideful heart. The more knowledge we have or gain or attain, or the more knowledge we believe we have, the more we start to think that we have all the keys. Many people, especially the younger ones, tend to think that there is one key to life without recognizing that there are several keys. I can take you into a building and I can give you a bunch of keys. But if I do not tell you what key unlocks a particular door, if this is a very, very large house, you will spend most of your time trying and testing different locks, keys, to see which fits. You can spend an entire day going between rooms and testing different keys. All that time is your life being spent? In each of those rooms could be treasures that you could be enjoying. So I drop you off at the house. Let's say it's a manor house. And let's say in this particular case, it has 20 bedrooms. And let's say it has about 9 or 10 lounges and living rooms, including accessories or stores and ancillary parts of the building. And I give you perhaps a bunch of keys or 100 keys at 9 in the morning. Each room has something of value. I don't tell you what key opens what door because they are not labeled, but I simply say, you get to keep what you find. Now, the first thing most people will do, such as myself, and I think yourself, will be to take the bunch of keys, go to the first door, and start trying each key. Recognize that had I given you a bunch of key and the key was labeled, and you knew what door and what key, it would probably take you a lot less time to go into each room and enjoy what has been given to you as a gift. And that is how life works. We've been given gifts, and the gifts require keys to get into the door. And until we learn and we understand what key operates what door, and most importantly, what gift is in there, we spend most of our lives in trial and error, making mistakes and learning from our experiences. Now, this brings me to an important statement. If you want to be successful, there are two pathways you can choose. These two pathways are not mutually exclusive. The first is you can learn from your own mistakes by investing your time. Time is something you exchange for anything you want in life. In exchange for your time, you get the experience. The experience will come with, if unskilled and untrained, the experience sometimes will come with hurt, pain, sometimes with pleasure and gain. In any case, there'll be mistakes to be made. Now, when we succeed in life, generally speaking, we celebrate. When we fail, we tend to ponder and introspect. Failure plus introspection and reflection and corrective action normally leads to progress. So when we fail, we tend to pause and stop and ask why. And that period of why and pausing causes us to reflect and to understand or ask ourselves questions. Why did things not go the way I wanted? You see, experience is what you get or what you got when you did not get what you wanted. The second way of learning is by learning from other people's experience through mentors. So the first way is what I call personal experiences, PE. The second way is OPE, other people's experiences. The best way to learn in life, the younger you are, is to lean on the experiences of older, mature people, wiser people, people with better judgment, people with more understanding, and people who've lived longer than you have. And as you get towards the age of reason, in my opinion, 35 is when you start that journey, you can lean more on your own understanding. But before that, you lean on the understanding and wisdom and lived experiences of other people. Most men do not succeed in life because from 18, we are led to believe that we have come of age and that we can make decisions ourselves. Which is why in the West particularly, we're doing a horrible job, because we have young men and women making the most important decisions of their lives without their fathers or their parents or the community's support or involvement. Buy houses, we get married, we start a career. Some of us actually choose our college pathway with no influence, recommendation, guidance from anyone. And we are surprised how we turn up at 30 and we've wasted about 13 years of our lives and we have nothing to show for it. At 18, we start getting married and are surprised that by 22, we get divorced. There is a correlation between the younger you are and the likelihood of divorce. As a matter of fact, people below 25 have a 100% higher chance of divorce than people who get married 25 and above. Now, let me say that again. If you're 25 years and below, and we find someone who is 25 years and above, you have two parties. The one who is 25 years and below has a 100% higher likelihood of divorce than the other group. Why? You're inexperienced. You're still a child. As a matter of fact, when I converse and I speak to young people, I generally speaking do not want to hear from people below 25. Now it seems harsh, but there's a method to my madness. Sometimes I make exceptions and I might listen to someone at 24. But 25 is the cut-off mark. Why? 18 to 22, you're in college. You're dependent on your parents. Mom and dad are subsidizing your entire education system or some form of scholarship. You haven't lived. You haven't earned. You know nothing. You've left your mother's house as a child and moved into college and operating based on knowledge from your parents or ignorance. One of the two. You haven't lived. Post-college, at 23, most people start working. Some people take a year off to travel. You're still a child. But people wait until about 25 and they start to break off from parents because the first 2 years you start working, you've just finished college, mom and dad are still providing financial support, emotional support, physical presence. Sometimes many people live with their parents. Even at 25, 2 years after earning a living or working. So 25 is when we really have independent adults. People who have come of age and they can say, since 25, I'm not relying on mom and dad's bank account or direction. Direction, I have no issue with that. But I'm simply saying you're not independent just yet. You're still fully dependent. So it's only from about 25 that people start to make decisions for themselves. At that point, you start from a position of 0. 25, you're an independent functioning adult. You have 0 experience. If you have 0 experience, based on your lived experience, remember OPE and PE, so your personal experience is 0 at that point. Remember, college is perhaps not the right way to assess life. You're in a controlled, conditioned area. It's like a controlled group. That's not reality or the world. It's only when you get into the world you realize how different it is from college. But from 25, you have 0. Now, you can learn from your experiences or you can learn from other people's experiences. You can combine both. And those who are wise are those who choose when to start the combination process. You should lean on other people's experiences the younger you are, but as you move towards the age of manhood, 35, you should start combining both other people's experiences and success formulas that work with your lived experiences. Because you need a philosophy that works, but you need a philosophy that fits you. Before you choose your philosophy, you have to rely on a philosophy that someone else has used, stood the test of time, and produced success. But your lived experience, when you start to live above 25, combined with the philosophy you chose and the principles you chose to live by, will put you in a position where you can actually start to produce or make a list of what your actual philosophy of life is. Because it will be a combination of what your lived experience has to show and what your philosophy, which you chose, tells you to do, and where there are discrepancies. And then as such, you tend to let go of some other person's philosophy, and over time, you start to carve out a philosophy that fits you based on your temperament, personality, and the vision you have. The reason I use 35 is because at 35, you have an idea, sense, having had 30 to 35 to fail. But let me take a step back because I think this is very, very key for men. The key question is if you believe that everything I've shared so far, you believe it to be helpful, and you understand the whole concept of mentors and mistakes, or OPE and PE, the key question then is, okay, how can you put pride aside? Because I have found in almost every instance, when I meet young men who are 20, 19, 22, 30, 35 even, there was a sense that they have to make the decisions themselves, that there's something wrong in relying on other people's lived experiences. You see, you can learn from failures and you can learn from success. You can look at the life that people have lived and you can put people into 2 separate groups. Good examples, people who've succeeded and people who have failed. And you can simply avoid doing what the failures did and do what the successes did. So you can learn from 2 people's experiences. But I tend to find most young men are closed-minded. It's almost as though they think, well, it's my life, which is pride. Yes, it is your life. But There's a calling and a purpose behind your life. There's a why. And the essence is not to squander that life based on the fact that you realize it's yours, but recognize that there is something greater than yourself. Humble yourself, understand what that purpose should be, and walk in the pathway of that purpose by making sure you don't choose pathways that take you away from your ultimate purpose. But the key question, therefore, will be if you agree and you believe in the OPE and the PE approach to life, as a young man, how do you decide how much of your knowledge and lived experience you should rely on? Let me give you a formula that I think works. My formula. 18 to 22, college years. Remember, prior to 18, about 95% of your, in my opinion, 95 to 99% of your decisions should be based on whoever is your guardian, your parents, assuming you come from a good, decent family, two-parent family, mum and dad, loving, kind, both wearing the masculine and the feminine archetype, and both wise. You follow their advice. You simply take the formula they've given you and apply the formula because they should be successful, and therefore success leaves clues, and you simply do what you see them doing. It's spaced repetition. You just simply, some people are trying to reinvent success. Find success and copy it. Your parents should have a blueprint of success at 18. Between 18 and 22 college years, 95% of your decisions should be based on the wisdom, the guidance, the judgment, the discernment, the understanding from your parents. At that point, college. At that point in time, you start to introduce more people into the lexicon. People whose opinions you can lean on because your parents do not have a fountain of wisdom for every single area of life. If you want to go into business, if you want to go into health, if you want to go into well-being and spirituality, but the key thing is to find people. Now at 18, you cannot choose your mentors. You're too young. You're too easily influenced. So you need to be leaning on your parents. So 95% of your decisions should come from your parents and good mentors. But the mentors that are selected should come from your parents or the wise counsel around you. Between 22 or 23 and let's say 30, my opinion is probably about, and the number increases on a sliding scale. At 24, 25, it should be about 90%. But as you move towards 30, the number should be about 80%. Of all of your knowledge and decisions should still come from wise people, successful people, mentors. Now, the session I did yesterday, I said about 5% of your income should be spent, between 5 and 10%, and sometimes more, depending on how successful you want to be, should be spent on finding the right mentors, the right coaches, networking, and learning from other people. So you should be surrounding yourself, and as you move from 25 towards 30, you start to not necessarily let go of your parents' philosophy, but bring in the lived experience of other people. Because your parents may have loved you, but they may not have prepared you for success and for life. You bring in other people, some people even who disagree with your parents' philosophy, and try to reason with their philosophy and juxtapose their philosophy against your parents' philosophy. At 30, roughly about 80% of your wisdom should still come from, or your decisions should still come from, the wisdom of other people. As you move between 30 and 35, that number should drop down to about 65. Only about 40% or 35% of your wisdom should be made by your lived experience. Why? You still haven't lived. You're still too young. Now let me go back to the statement I made. At 25, you start at 0. Independent adult experience, 0. Let me put it in another way that perhaps will matter. Let's say I sat with someone we had two people sat together. One is 45, one is 25. The 25-year-old has 0 experience, independent adult experience, at 25. Because they have not lived, they've been relying on other people's knowledge and other people's philosophies. The 45-year-old, on the other hand, has 20 years ahead of the 25-year-old, but also 20 years of independent lived experience. If we have 100 experiences every day, in a year, it simply means 365 days. The person who goes through a whole year will have 36,500 experiences. Across 20 years, they'll have roughly 730,000 experiences, more than the person who's 25. If we assume all experiences are equal, at 45 and at 25, you've had 700, almost a million, we'll round it up to a million, almost a million more experiences than someone who is just starting at 25. Can you see the discrepancy? When it comes to making decisions, all things remaining equal, is not comparable. But as you hit 35 and as you start to switch to 36 and over, most of your decisions should come based on your lived experience. You have to take more responsibility, so it should be slightly greater than 50%. So that you can say, it was my decision. Why? At this point, you've had 10 years of independent adult lived experience. Now, if you've had 10 years and you cannot achieve wisdom, judgment, discernment, understanding at 35, then there is a big problem. But in any case, as you move between 30 and 40, that number starts to increase of your independent experience. So you find an 95% to 97% comes from your parents, but at 35, only about 35 to 40% come from other people. The number never goes to 100%. So even at 50, you should still have roughly about 30% of your wisdom, discernment, guidance should come from other people. But you're still holding the majority because you're supposed to be a functioning adult and responsible for your life. And you've lived long enough to know right from wrong. Now, the reason I've gone through the process of explaining this very carefully is because I tend to find in young men, the reason most young men will not be successful or why they find success difficult is they're trying to go about success with the knowledge that they have. You see, the knowledge you have at 18 got you to where you are. To bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be, you're going to need a high level of understanding. Albert Einstein said that you cannot solve a problem at the same level that created it. There is you and there is your potential. Sometimes what you have to do is get yourself close to someone who sees the greatness in you and knows the pathway to pull out that greatness at a point in time when you are still a child and unable to see the greatness in you. Most people self-sabotage their success because they do not have an idea about their potential. So at 18 and 19, you're excited about life. You've been given this lease of life. You're an adult. You can do everything. But teenagers are funny because every day they wake up in the morning and it's almost as though they ask themselves a simple question. I have all this potential that could be in the future. What could I do today to destroy all that potential and ensure that I do not become the best version that I could be? A mentor is someone who likes you. A coach is someone who likes you too much to leave you the way you are. A friend is someone who loves you just the way you are. And the younger you are, you need more coaches and less friends. Most people who have encountered and have interactions with me often say I'm too blunt. I'm never too subtle. Why? I understand the impact of time. And I don't believe in wasting life. I don't believe in abusing time. The use of time abnormally should not be tolerated, especially at the young age between 18 and 35. That is the years of sowing the seeds of success, greatness, preparing for your final calling and assignment. So I don't care so much about how you think or what you think about me. I'm not looking for your affection. I care more about the potential. My responsibility is to your potential and who you could become rather than how you feel about me in the present. And the younger you are, the more you should get around people who take that same position because they are simply saying they have lived their lives. And if they had to live their life over again, that they have regrets and they've made mistakes and therefore they would want to live it without all those errors. Most people say, well, you have to live life to know what not to do. I disagree. You don't have to burn your hand on a hot pot to recognize or to understand that it will be painful. The younger you are, you lean more on the wisdom of wise people and you only allow 5% or less and that number increases as you become mature, functioning, and an independent adult. The younger you are, the less it is. But imagine this, think about this from a business perspective. Let's say I had a portfolio, and this is the best way perhaps I can explain this concept. I came up to you and I said, here you are, you're 18, has £1 million. Take the money and invest it. That £1 million is all the money I would ever give you. That's your inheritance. At 18, if you're not careful, you will become like the prodigal son, who took all the wealth, in this particular instance, went to his father and said, just give me my half. I don't want to be around your wisdom. I don't want to be around your intelligence. I don't care what you've done, father, to create all this wealth. I'm entitled to half of the wealth. Give me mine half. He gets his half. He travels across to another location and squanders the entire money, makes new friends, and they spend the money till it's not zero. So effectively, the milk barrel is now empty. Nothing. What does he do? He goes back to his father's house and says, I'm sorry. That is the life of most people. You take all the time is your most important asset. Your resources, your emotions, your psyche, and you squander it on a lifestyle that is not in keeping with what you should be. On the other hand, at 18, if he had said to his father, Father, I have this desire in me to try things. So keep 95% of what you normally would give me as my wealth. Give me 5%. I'm going to use 5% the way I think it should be used. But you manage 5%, 95%, because you already have the proven track record of success. And let me see what I can do with my 5%. Now, if I came up to you and I took £100 million from you, or took you £100 million to manage on your behalf, and I came back to you and I said, listen, I'm sorry I lost 5%. It's a big loss, but it's not significant, because suddenly you've gone from having 100 to losing 5. It's huge, but not significant. On the other hand, if you went out to the market with no knowledge, just based on the fact that you believe you're prideful, or rather you believe you have the keys to the vault, not recognizing that it's a prideful spirit, and you invest all of that using your knowledge, and you lose 95% of that and you have 5, suddenly the loss is huge. Now let me explain why this is key. At a younger age, if you apply everything I have said so far, you're 18, 95%, or you're 20, 95% of your decisions are based on the wisdom of your parents, and 5% from yours. From an investment perspective, this is important, this is powerful. I'm going to go through some numbers and pay attention to the numbers. If you lose 5% of your portfolio, to break back even to where you were, you need to gain roughly about 5%. It's an equal exchange. The reason why? The number is so small. If you lose 10% of the portfolio, to break back even to where you were before the loss, you need 11%. Again, the number is fairly comparable. If you lose 15%, you need 18% to break even. Still, the number is still comparable. If it starts to get bigger, the deviation starts to expand from 20%. You lose 20%, you need to make back 25%. So there's a 5% huge difference. You lose 25%, you have to make 33%. You lose 30%, you have to make 43.3%. You lose 50%. To break back even to where you were before the loss, you need to make back 100%. Double. Huge. 50%, you have to make back 100. If you lose 75% of the portfolio, you have to make back 333%. Here's the big number. If you lost 90% of your portfolio, you would have to make back 900% to break back even. Now, on average, over the past 75 to 100 years, a low-cost index fund like the S&P 500 has earned about 10% return every year. We go back to the numbers. You lose 10%. If you need to make back 11, you can break it back even in 1 year. But we take a big jump. We go to 50%. You have to make back 100%. If the average return on the market is 10% and you need to make back 100, it will take you 10 years. If you lose 90% and you need to make back 900%, and you can only make 10% every year on average, it will take you 90 years. Can you see the reason why small losses have huge, rather, what might seem as small losses can have consequences. If you're going to make mistakes with the small numbers, because the consequences are not as huge as the large numbers. You want to make mistakes early, but very little. But most important, ideally, you should minimize making mistakes in the first place until you've actually secured the right foundation so that you do not have to make mistakes. Now, 7 in 10 businesses fail in the first 5 years. Why? Because most businesses are started by young people and have no experience. Of the businesses that are started by people and who are surrounded by good people, they generally do not go out of business in the first 5 years. Why? They have wise counsel and people who have succeeded telling them, you do X, you do Y. And the business thrives. And at some point, the person who started the business starts to make the decisions based on their experience. Let me bring today's session to a close. There is a long route to success. That route is pride. The refusal to let go of self and the refusal not to hold too closely to the knowledge you have. Many people refuse to apprentice other people. If you refuse to learn under other people, you will find that success will be a longer route. In your case, why? You're choosing to learn from your mistakes. Some of your mistakes may be fatal. Some of them you may never recover from. You must think about using the wisdom, the judgment, the discernment, and the success of other people at an early stage of your life. So you build the right foundation. As a matter of fact, here's this simple thing to keep in mind. Success is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple because it requires a formula. You learn the success formula, you apply the formula. You don't change the formula until you've achieved success. Most people are trying to reinvent a formula that works. It's like a simultaneous equation, a quadratic equation. You don't have to change the equation. The equation works. Apply the equation, get the success you want, and when you have abundance, then you can start playing around with the equation. And you can choose a limited amount to play with, 5%, 10%, but you keep the core, the main part of your wealth and success protected. Success is supposed to be boring. You see, getting wealthy and getting rich is supposed to be boring. Most people are trying to get wealthy and become successful with excitement. The reason success and wealth is boring is because we take out emotions. Emotion is the enemy of an investor. Emotion is the enemy of a rational investor. You eliminate emotions because investing in wealth and success is an intellectual game, it's a rational game. You put emotions aside, so you're not varying between feelings, and you simply look at the numbers. You apply the formula. If it's boring, then do it boring. Pride is what steps in to say, this is too boring. This is not exciting enough. I don't like him. As a matter of fact, one of the things I learned very young, I grew up from very humble beginnings. And one of the things my parents did, which I thought, and I still think was one of the greatest gifts they ever gave us, they always made sure that we had a reverence for successful people. And when we saw people who were successful, we did not think they have and I don't have. They simply instilled in us a way of admiring people who had more than you had, but also instilling in us the passion for questions and how to go to people and say, how did you achieve success? What formulas did you use? How did it work? Talk to me about your story. So when you combine a desire for success with an awe of people who have success, what you find, and I found over my life, is I became a very good student. It was easy for people who were successful to pull me under their wings because they could see that I admired them. I wanted to be like them. I asked a lot of questions. They could sense my desire. And so I became teachable and coachable. There wasn't any sense of pride. Most young men will not find success because you're not teachable, you're not coachable, you're arrogant, you have too much pride. As a matter of fact, there's an intellectual pride that comes with young men. You tend to feel threatened by the possibility that you know very little. The younger you are, the little you know. And you have to get comfortable with knowing little, but relying on the knowledge and the lived experience of other people. So let me close by saying the following. One of the best ways to remove pride from your vocabulary and pride from your lifestyle is a simple process. Ask questions always. Ask questions relentlessly and always be curious. Be fascinated. Don't be arrogant. Don't be boastful. Don't have pride. Stay humble. From dust we've come, and to dust we will go. Remember, you are a human being. You're the humus man. At the core, humus, humble. There is nothing to be boastful about, and there is nothing to be ashamed about. Use the success of other people to make yourself successful. Now, I hope today's session has been useful.